Welcome to Soundbite, the podcast where we talk to interesting people in the Maritimes about their stories and current issues. I'm Caitlin Dutt, one of your co-hosts.
And I'm Tim Porter. Okay, welcome to the podcast. Hello,
Welcome
Caitlin.
back, everybody.
How are you?
I'm good. Just another sunny day in Fredericton.
Yeah, we're kind of into the summer stretch.
Yeah.
It's feeling good.
Yeah.
Feeling good.
Yeah, exactly. A little bit of quiet in the emails.
Yes.
It's kind of nice this time of year.
Yeah. So we have an exciting guest today.
Yes. If you haven't heard, Andrea-Anderson Mason is on our show today. Yes. How exciting.
AAM.
Exactly.
My middle initial is D, actually, so it's actually Adam.
There's a D in there.
Okay, there we go. Awesome.
That's my son's name.
Well, Andrea was an MLA from 2018 to 2024 for Fundy, the Isles, and St. John West. Is that right?
Yeah, and you said this was maybe going to be exciting, but I have to warn you in advance. I did message Tim and say, like, how entertaining do you want this to be? And he said, medium. And the person beside me said, Andrea only comes in 2 flavors, mild or spicy. So
I'm ready for the spicy Andrea to come
right?
out.
We'll see how it goes.
Yeah. Well,
we got a lot of stuff to talk about this podcast, that's for sure.
How are we going to cram this into 25 minutes? I don't know.
I don't know. We'll have to put a double overtime, I think.
Thank you so much for having me. This is great.
You're a refugee from Charlotte County.
Yeah. Well, I call myself a political refugee.
Yeah.
But
for good reason.
But I'm here in Fredericton now. My family moved in October of last year, and we're loving Fredericton.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
You're a policy wonk at UNB now.
I am, and I got to tell you, for me, it was sort of like coming home. So my story is when I started the first grade, my brother started university.
Oh.
And
Wow.
for, let me count, 17 years straight afterwards, the Anderson family was bringing somebody to the UNB campus.
Uh-huh.
Wow.
I think you add us all up, and we're something like 29 years of
Okay.
UNB.
There you go. You're just paying your dues.
Good. Yeah.
And now here I am. I'm back home, right? My daughter's attending here. It's all good.
Well, you must
awesome.
have. You went to law school here.
I
guess.
did. I did both my undergraduate and my law school.
Right.
Okay, nice.
And you were a lawyer in St. George, was it? Or
I started
where was
out,
your shingle?
I started out in St. John.
St. John.
Yeah,
Nice.
I started out in St. John, and my last few years were as a sole practitioner in St. George, and
Oh, okay.
then I jumped into politics. So,
Yeah. You were a disciple of Greg Thompson, the late great Greg Thompson.
Was I ever? I fell in love with Greg when
Right.
I was 9. So understand, I don't come from a political family.
Okay.
Okay, so my father has some American baggage, and my mother doesn't. But we grew up in a home where nobody discussed politics. There was never a lawn sign ever.
Okay.
And when I was about 9 years old, Greg Thompson knocked on the door, and I was like, what is this magic? I fell in love, and he hooked me. He had me. Yeah.
So he was a progressive conservative.
He was a wonderful man.
And you fell into that area as well when you started to take up politics?
Yeah, actually, even in the years that I was working in St. John. So I worked for a firm.
Right.
I worked for Clark Drummy, and anybody knows Clark Drummy, that's also Paul Zedd's law firm that he was associated with.
Yes.
And, I guess maybe I'm a progressive. I see it from all viewpoints. So I used to work really hard on Paul Zedd's campaigns. I worked on 2 of his federal campaigns and believed he was the right person at the time for those positions. But it was very much known. I was heading back to Charlotte County to mark my ex beside Greg Thompson. So
okay.
Right. Yeah.
And why did you decide to run in 2018, was it?
Oh, well, 2018. So first of all, I should backtrack. I've always loved politics. And a lot of people have already heard this story, but I'll repeat it again. When I got married, my husband said to me, look, if you're thinking politics, shelve that idea because I'm not being married to a politician.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I was
Look how that turned out.
Okay, yeah, right. Well, that's what happened. Sometime in 2017, we were actually driving around looking for other places to live.
Okay.
We were really discouraged with the direction that the province was going in. I am the last of my siblings. I'm an Anderson from Andersonville, and I'm the last Anderson left in New Brunswick. Okay,
Wow.
so
Yeah.
my sisters are in the U.S., my brother's in Alberta,
I see.
everybody else is
Right.
left.
Right.
And my husband, one day, we were looking at Nova Scotia properties, trying to find a place where, the kids could still do their French immersion
Yes.
and their speed
Right.
skating, and we're trying to figure this all out. And he looks at me and he says, so what are we going to do? Like, are you doing this? Are we moving? Or are you going to fix this place?
Okay.
And that was basically him saying, let's do this. And it was a decision that we really made as a family to go into politics because we truly believed in New Brunswick. I still believe in New Brunswick. It just needs a little course correction. That's
Okay.
all.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, it is really like a family decision. I mean, you're in the news all the time, and of course that'll affect like your husband and your children. And
You know what? It is a family decision, and we do talk a lot about women in politics and what they bear. But what we don't talk about is we don't talk about husbands.
justice for the husbands.
Honestly, justice for the husbands. That was one of the things that surprised me the most in politics was what my husband endured versus what perhaps the wives of those people I was elected with endured.
Interesting.
People would come to him and say, you tell your wife,
Right.
right?
Okay.
He got something different as a man married to a politician than women married to politicians. And I think it's an important discussion. I'm not sure your listeners really want to hear about
Right.
it, but
Well,
he got a different kind of experience than others might
Right.
have. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what was like a day in the life like as an MLA?
Okay, the biggest shock for me, and it changed a little bit over the 6 years. One of the biggest shocks for me was the number of people who asked me for jobs.
Interesting.
Yeah, so Point Lepreau, of course, is in my riding.
Right.
And the number of people that I would come to my office and say, can you get me a job at Point Lepreau was shocking. I almost put a sign on the door that said, if you're here to get a job at Point Lepreau, I'm not your girl.
This is not an employment office.
But there's that whole lingering old way of doing politics that was really entrenched, especially in Charlotte County.
Yes.
I don't know exactly what it's like for other parts of the province, but basically, if you want a job, if you want to be on the road crew, if you want a job at Point Lepreau, you get that through your elected member of the legislature. And, I would repeatedly tell people, I can't do that for you.
Right.
It's not,
Yeah.
it was because politics have changed very much. I think back in the day, maybe that's the way it worked, but it really doesn't work that way now.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was the biggest shock, how many people came looking for jobs.
Is there anything else?
The other thing I think that might surprise people is the number of calls that we do get about roads, private
course.
roads in particular.
Yeah.
I thought Sheldon paved all the roads in
He
Charlotte County.
did, but here's the problem. Is Sheldon did pave absolutely everything. Okay, no question. The road to Bonnie River is still probably one of the best roads in New Brunswick because it got paved in the election going into my first election. They just paved the whole thing.
Wow.
Also, the road to Grand Manan they paved as well. But what happened is, eventually over time they start deteriorating.
Yeah.
And, we just don't have that same pulse. So Route 785 is a complete disaster. So the problem with paving everything is eventually, if you don't take care of it, it falls apart.
Right.
Yeah, and with the whole climate in New Brunswick too, it's just setting that up for disaster too. It's only a matter of time for the freezing and the rain and everything just cracks the pavement wide open.
Look, DTI is one of those departments that we still haven't quite figured it all out. If there's a department in government that we really need to dig into, DTI is definitely one of them. It's very challenging. Roads are incredibly important to New Brunswickers. I know there was a former politician who will remain nameless, who he said, all we really want in New Brunswick is we want great schools for our kids. We want good hospitals when we have healthcare issues, and we want great roads to get to both of them.
Sounds good to me.
You do that in New Brunswick as a politician, and you're golden.
Simple
Yep.
equation.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly.
Easy.
Equation for success.
So you were Attorney General.
I was.
Yeah.
That was fun.
Yeah, that was a good accomplishment.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I didn't want to be Attorney General. That's the funny thing. So
Right.
when you first get elected, or at least this is how it worked for us, we did this interview with the Premier where he sat down and talked to each of us. And it's interesting because it was different in the first election than it was in the second. So in the first election, we sat down, we did these one-on-one interviews. And I remember very clearly the Premier saying to me, so what are you thinking? And honestly, my response was I'm brand new at this job. It doesn't even make sense that I go into cabinet. Let me learn the job first. I didn't realize that all my other colleagues were were like, elbows up, trying to like compete with each other, trying to get into cabinet. I was just happy that I was there to represent the people of my riding. I mean, that for me was the greatest honor.
Okay.
I didn't need to be in cabinet.
Yes.
And so he said, no, like if you're going to be, if that's a possibility, where do you want to be? And I was like, look, I'm exhausted. I've been practicing law for like 20 years. Could you throw me in tourism, right? Like,
Right.
and that's exactly what I said. And I remember he looked at me and he said, don't you think you should challenge yourself a bit more than that?
Right.
Now, I don't know if you know how it happens. So after that meeting, we all kind of go our separate ways. And the night before the swearing in, the premier makes a phone call and calls you up and says, this is where you're going to be. Don't tell anyone. Meet you at the legislature at 10 o'clock tomorrow.
Wow, okay.
And that's how it happens.
Yeah.
Now, the second election was a little different.
Tell us about that.
They actually got us to do personality tests.
Interesting.
Yeah, I did this like little online like personality test.
Which
Yes.
one do you remember?
I was a maverick is what my personality came back as.
Right,
And as you
yeah.
all know, I did not make the cut for the cabinet the second time around.
Shoot, so I guess that's not a great personality. I don't know.
So yeah, don't be a maverick. Don't be a maverick if you
Not
want to be in
not
cabinet.
the personality type for cabinet.
Yeah. Don't do that.
I think it's fine. I think,
Okay.
yeah. But skipping ahead a bit to, nearing the end of the whole, there's a whole controversy, Policy 713. I'm sure you've heard about it.
I don't even know if it really even applies to me, honestly.
Yeah. But you were one of the half a dozen MLAs that decided to kind of vote contrary to the government in favor of the child and youth advocates, listening to his recommendations. Did you notice a shift in caucus when you did this?
It wasn't for me. So my experience is very different than everybody else. I think it's really important to pay attention to the fact that I said I didn't come from a political family, right? So I wasn't politically engaged growing up. I remember the day I told my mother I was running for politics. She was mortified. She was like, people are now going to know how we vote. So I didn't, a lot of the people that I was elected with, they have political families. They've grown up in the system. They've been very connected to the party. I wasn't that way. And in fact, I'd really engaged in both parties because I had worked with Paul Zed and what he did. And I've always been the person who I feel like you need to do what's best for the situation around you. I'm sure if you cut me open, I bleed blue, right? My tendencies, my values do tend to align with the conservative values, though I'm not sure that if you ask a conservative today in New Brunswick that they can tell you what conservative values are. That's a whole other conversation that we should
We'll
have.
get to that.
Okay. So for me, I just looked at things very differently, and perhaps I was very naive. So a couple of things. I am a bit of a maverick in my personality. I believe in having really difficult conversations, challenging conversations, because as a lawyer, that's what you have to do. I had an advantage over my colleagues because as a lawyer, I was used to walking into a courtroom and having half the people already hate me. So I wasn't maybe as influenced by the negativity on social media and the public that they were receiving, where I found a lot of them found that really challenging. I didn't find it so challenging. I felt like we still needed to press on and have the difficult conversations where I'm not sure that politicians today are comfortable with that.
That's a good skill to have, though, especially today in social media and all that, negative feedback.
You got to focus. You got to focus on doing what's the right thing to do. So my first real introduction into the Conservative Party, into politics, I remember it very, very well. I went to their AGM in Edmundston, and I had somebody say to me, we were voting for the president of the party. And they said to me, do you know, like, how you're going to vote? And there were two people running for the position. One guy was a young lawyer from Woodstock who I knew a little bit, and the other guy I didn't know at all. And I was like, yeah, I'm voting for, the young guy from Woodstock because I kind of knew him, thought he was a good guy. And the person looked at me and said, that's not who the leader wants. And I was like, oh, yeah. And they said, no, we have a way of doing things around here, and we vote for who the leader wants. And I was like, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Like, why are we even having an election? If we're just going to go with what the leader wants, let's just put that person in. This is ridiculous. Why are we doing this dog and pony show? That should have been my first sign. Yeah. So when I got elected, and I remember sitting around the cabinet table, I remember different things happening and me kind of being like, just amazed, saying, but wait a minute, like, we didn't discuss that. or that's not a conservative value.
Right. Was there quite a shift when you had a minority government with the Higgs government in the first term, and then the majority came along? But was there a shift between the minority and the majority?
Well, I mean, when we went into a majority, I mean, we were completely locked out. I have a hard time even saying what government even looked like at that point in time, because if you
Central
weren't,
control.
Yeah, I mean, if you weren't part of the people at the table, then you weren't part of the conversation.
Right.
Did you even get any updates from
Very
the
seldom
people at the top?
Very seldom. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, sometimes you would get notice like a couple of hours before an announcement was to be made, but the backbenchers were completely closed out. But backtrack a little bit. I remember in those early days in cabinet being like, "This is odd. Like, why are we doing this?" And I remember a few, of my other cabinet members kind of like tapping me on the knee and saying, "There. This is how we do things."
It's starting, yes.
And I was kind of like, that's weird.
Right.
And
All
I
the red
remember,
flags.
I remember running into the Premier's office one day and saying, "This isn't what I thought. Like, I thought we were all going to sit around the table and have some challenging conversations and work it all out." And I remember he looked at me and he said, "Yeah, I remember thinking that too. It just can't be that way."
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to represent your constituents, too, if you don't know what's going on around the table at the top.
Yeah, you do your best. You do your best. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
And then there's that whole balance between the elected and the civil service.
Yeah.
Right?
For sure.
That's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah.
And so I think for me, there's a real frustration in how we do government. And I haven't figured out the solution, but I think we can do it better. I got up this morning. This is Andrea's irritation of the day. Is this okay for me to do this?
Go for it.
Yes.
Caitlin looks okay, but Tim looks a little like, I'm not sure where she's going with this. Okay, so one of the topics today was the closure of the McDonald farm in Miramichi. Did everybody see that in the news?
Give us a little recap.
It's not really that interesting, but there's like this little historic site. 2,300 people a year come and visit it, and the province has said we're not funding it anymore.
Oh, okay.
Okay, 2,300 people.
Yes.
Well, CHCO, big shout out to Vicky Hogarth here.
Right.
Okay, do we know Vicky?
Yeah, she's great.
Okay, you have her on your show, right? She's
Yes.
my recommendation.
Yeah,
She's wonderful.
awesome.
So she does great reporting. She actually did a news story, or they did a news story down in CHCO on the Minister's Island
Yes.
and the funding for Minister's Island.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, I just want to give you the highlights for that. So they're looking at cutting the funding for Minister's Island. So Minister's Island gets roughly 25,000 visitors a year.
Yes.
They get $100,000 from the provincial government. King's Landing gets roughly 35,000 visitors a year. They get funding of $3.6 million.
Wow. Yeah.
Okay, so let's pretend this is Dragon's Den. Okay, Tim, I look at you and I say, you can give me $100,000
Right.
and I'll give you 25,000 visitors.
Right.
Or you can give me $3.6 million and I'll give you 35,000 visitors.
Yeah.
Where's your big return on investment?
Sure.
You got an answer?
Yeah.
Where's your best return on investment?
Are you going to go pick it?
It seems like it's Minister's Island.
Bing, 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 bing. We have a winner. We have a winner. But here's what happens, okay? Government comes in and they say, we're going to empower the civil service. I love that expression. We could talk about that. We're going to let them make decisions. We
Yes.
need you to do cost savings, right? And so the civil service comes along and says, well, here, we'll save $100,000 over here.
Right.
Right? And I don't even understand how this happens, right? In my opinion, the minister's responsibility at that point in time is to say, let's take a look at the numbers,
Right.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
To me, that decision just does not make sense. Does that make sense to anybody?
Right.
If I'm in that position, I'm going to say, look, I'm giving this group over here $100,000. They're getting me 25,000 people. Maybe I should give them 200,000 and see if they can get me 35,000 people. We need a growth mentality, not a how do we save a little bit of money mentality, which that's kind of where New Brunswick is really trapped, right? We're always looking to trim around the edges and we're not looking at where we can really go.
Yeah.
And until we have a major switch in how we do things in New Brunswick, we're going to just continue to decline.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate.
So when are you putting your name in for the leadership of the PC party?
Maybe you should be the tourism minister.
I should be tourism minister, right?
Yeah.
I should be tourism minister. Absolutely.
Well, yeah. I mean, we do invest in a lot of little things, but nothing big. I mean, nothing that really catches people's eye, I find, in New Brunswick in terms of tourism. So it would be good to develop what we have and develop it further.
It'd be good to actually ask some solid questions. Like I have to ask, where was the minister on this decision?
Right. Yeah.
Right? Where was the minister on this decision?
Right.
Who is the civil servant who actually came up with this as the right idea?
Yeah, and St. Andrews is quite vibrant in the summer. I spent a week there last week, and
it's nice.
you know, it's tourist galore from the States, or tons of people come up.
Absolutely. But what we do is we look at it and we say, how can we save a little bit of money?
Right.
Not how can we grow?
Yeah.
Let's put a craft brewery over there, right?
Yeah.
Let's have food over there. Let's grow it. Let's make sure there's 35,000 people there next year.
People are coming, so yeah.
Yeah.
But
We need a growth mentality.
Yeah.
No, agreed.
Yeah.
So you had talked about a little bit earlier about conservative values, and I was doing some research prior to this podcast. I went on the New Brunswick PC website, and I tried to find any viable policy that they had. Nothing on their website.
We don't talk policy. We don't talk policy. We talk about how we get elected, but we don't really.
Yeah. So where do you having been an insider, where do you think the PC should go? In terms of like a policy direction, do you think they have like a good viable policy direction that can potentially get them elected again?
Well, I mean, we haven't had a policy party in what, 8 years, 10 years? How many years has it been?
A while ago. I think it was 8 years.
I think people are scared to talk about policies and positions, and I don't think we should be. I think those are the conversations that we should be having. And like I said, I'm one of those people that I like the shock value conversations. I was used to a career where I walked into the courtroom, I fought hard for what I believed in, and then at lunchtime when we broke, I'd go have lunch with the person who was sitting across the table, right? Mm-hmm. And what I found when I got into politics is people didn't work that way. It was different. People took things very much more, I want to say, personal. And I understand that I'm a little bold and out there sometimes in my conversations, but I think those conversations are important. Yeah. Why we seem to be so focused on getting the power, but not having the conversations. Am I making sense?
Yep.
I want to go out and say, what do you really want? Where do we want to go? Yeah, but those are difficult conversations to have, and I don't see the Conservative Party willing to have those conversations right now.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, they're definitely in a bit of a limbo moment. Mm-hmm. They do have a leadership convention coming up, and it seems to me like, Daniel and his probably running, it seems to me, and I think he has said that he's running. And then Chris Austin is another maybe, and those seem like two very different directions that the party could go in.
Listen, I always called myself a Diefenbaker Tory. Okay. Mm-hmm. And not being really, I don't know if I was alive when Diefenbaker was around or not. Look at me. I'm looking at Tim like he was. That was really not nice of me, wasn't it? Anyway, I call myself a Diefenbaker Tory. So if anybody knows anything about Diefenbaker, they know his most famous speech. Do you know his most famous speech? It's the I am Canadian speech. I am a Canadian.
Recap for our listeners.
Okay, I'm going to do it because I read this every chance I get it. I am a Canadian, a free Canadian, free to speak without fear, free to worship God in my own way, free to stand for what I think is right, free to oppose what I believe is wrong, free to choose those who govern my country. This heritage of freedom I pledge to uphold for myself and all mankind. Diefenbaker was an amazing conservative. And I think that's the type of conservatism that we need to see in New Brunswick again.
Yeah.
Did you all tear up? Was that no?
No.
Did you grab your Canadian flags?
No. I'm like, that'd be a perfect place to just end.
Let's just end it now.
End it there. Yep. Mic drop.
Yep. That's the direction that I think the Conservative Party needs to go in, right? And I think that we have failed. I mean, we are no longer a big tent party. And I think that in true conservatism, we stay out of the minutiae of people's lives. The other thing that we do is we don't, we're small government. And when I watch what the Conservative Party in New Brunswick and federally has done, the turn that it has taken in the last few years, it is not that direction. We decided we're going to jump deep, heavy into people's bedrooms. I don't know that that's what we do. The other thing we did, especially here in New Brunswick, is we grew the civil service. What the heck, right? We brought in municipal reform, which was incredibly important. But if you actually look at the numbers, and I can't quote them off the top of my head, but they just came out last week, with the number of people, how much we've increased the size of the civil service in New Brunswick, we just grew it. We built a whole other layer of bureaucracy. That's not conservatism. Anyway.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. I think that there will definitely be a reckoning at some point, and that'll probably be around when they elect their new leader as to where the direction is going, and we'll just have to see.
So let's talk about that.
Okay.
Okay. What exactly does that mean? Are we actually led by our parties and our party values, or are we led by our leaders?
I don't know. What do you think?
From my experience, we're led by our leaders. That's what we do. We elect a leader, and we say, now you tell us what we're going to do. And even if they go in different directions, that's not like what I just read to you, which is not the core value of conservatism. We say nothing because we've managed to get in power. So everybody just keep quiet. Nobody move, right? This seems to be working. I remember at one point in time a policy coming to the cabinet table and me just sitting there in shock going, but this isn't conservative. And the chief of staff looked at me and said, but it's politically popular, Andrea. And we need transformational change now in New Brunswick. It's going to hurt a little bit. It's going to be difficult. So we need politicians who aren't going to just do what's politically popular, but do what's right for the province.
All right.
We need brave people.
Thanks, Andrea. That's all the time we have now for our radio side of things. I know it went by so fast, but thanks so much. And for our podcast listeners, stick around. After the musical interlude, we'll be back.
Yes.
Thanks.
Thanks. All right, we're into overtime. We were talking about leadership.
Yeah.
And now I want to talk about breasts.
Oh,
Yeah.
Sharp right turn.
healthcare. You wanted to talk about healthcare. Okay.
Right. Well, I mean, I said to you earlier that the whole discussion of empowering the civil service is a conversation unto itself.
Right.
You know, that's like the sexy phrase that all politicians trying to get elected that they say. And the reason why why do they say it? Well, because we're all related to the civil service, right? New Brunswick has the highest number of people working in the civil service than almost any other province. So how do you get elected? You tell them you're going to empower them.
Right.
I believe in empowering the civil service, but what does that mean? Is that the high ups? Are we empowering the deputies and the ADMs?
Yes.
I think it means we're empowering the people on the front lines on the ground.
Okay.
Right? So I said I wanted to talk about breasts.
Yes.
I said, we're full of these stories, right? Something happened in the Charlotte County Hospital recently.
Right.
And it's kind of made the news, but it really hasn't made the news. And so the foundation, the Charlotte County, what do we call them? Like we have the Chalmers Foundation here in
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there's one for the Charlotte County Hospital too.
Yes.
Great people, good-hearted people. They went out, raised a whole bunch of money, bought an MRI.
Yes.
Okay. So then, elections coming, we better get that MRI installed, right?
Right.
So that we can keep, people in Charlotte County happy. They bring the MRI in. Guess what? They don't have enough people
Nobody to run it.
to run the MRI and the mammograms.
Right.
So what do? The people who've been doing mammograms, and usually mammograms happen at the Charlotte County Hospital 3 to 4 days a week.
Yep.
Yeah, now they're over there running the MRI.
Oh, no.
Right.
So do you know how many days a month the mammograms are happening at the Charlotte County Hospital? 2.
Right.
Right. Then they go. So the news story comes out, and some civil servant comes out and says, "Oh, well, the only reason why we're seeing the decrease is because of vacations." Look at. Is this the first year we've ever had vacations at the Charlotte County Hospital? Is this a new thing for Charlotte County? Congratulations. People in Charlotte County now get to go on vacation. No. Like whoever made that statement needs to be fired.
Right.
Okay. Or the person overseeing them needs to be fired, right? Like that's the most ridiculous answer I have ever heard. It doesn't take a genius to dig into that situation a little bit and see what's going on.
Well, it's the same thing when there's long stretches where rural hospitals, they can't deliver a baby. They have to people have to make their way into the city to deliver a child. So.
Yeah, and then there's like overnight closures at some of the rural hospitals
Right,
too.
yeah.
But you know what? If we actually just started talking to some of the frontline people and empowering those frontline people, that's where we could actually get change in this province.
Yes.
But too often, and especially before I got elected and after I got elected, people would say to me, here, let me tell you what's really going on, but don't say that it came from me because I'm scared about what's going to happen to my job.
Mm-hmm.
And I would have teachers say that to me regularly. I would have healthcare workers say that to me regularly. And so we talk about how we have now empowered the civil service in that we're letting them maybe run the budget. We've not empowered the civil service. Until we actually start talking to the people that matter, which are the people who are dealing with these issues on a day-to-day basis, that's not an empowered civil service.
So you didn't run in the last election in 2024.
I didn't.
And okay. Why don't we explore that a little bit? Why did you decide to stand down?
What a disappointment, because can I tell you, there is nothing more fun as far as I'm concerned than running an election.
Yeah.
I love door to door. I love talking to people. I love hearing what they have to say. If I could spend most of my time just engaging with people to hear, that's what I would do. So it was a really difficult decision. A lot of people will say to me, yeah, politics was hard. Politics wasn't hard. You know what? Walking into the courtroom with all the burdens of the people that you're there for and making an argument, that's hard.
Right.
Politics was fun. It was great. The hard part was...
But...
Yeah, exactly. You're not a politician anymore,
No,
so
I'm
something
not.
happened.
The hard part was the faking it, right? I couldn't fake it.
Okay.
I couldn't be one of those politicians who, and you can find them, go look on Facebook, who they literally just put out birthday certificates they run around and hand out congratulatory certificates. And,
The people who say happy birthday on Facebook, is that what you're...
Well, that's what our local politicians have now become, right? They show up at all the birthday parties and they have little, right? I couldn't be that person.
You're 100 years old. Here's
Congratulations, right? And we've really devalued what our local politician is, our provincial politician is. That's what they've become. They've become official birthday greeters.
Okay.
Yeah. And
so,
I couldn't do that.
Yeah. So you stood down, and the Liberals won a fairly convincing majority. How did you feel about that?
That's New Brunswick. We vote people out. It was obvious that New Brunswick wanted change. Everywhere I went, you could tell New Brunswick wanted change.
Right.
Yeah.
And now we have a female premier.
We do.
That's good.
That is good.
Yeah.
That is good.
First one.
Yeah.
How do you think she's doing?
I'm still really optimistic. I've got to say I am concerned about the debt because I am a conservative.
Sure. Yes, of course.
Yeah, there have been a few
Right?
issues there. Yeah,
Yeah,
few issues in that area.
I remember when I first was going to run for politics, I was part of an NGO. I sat on their board, and I went to the executive director and said I was going to, drop off the board because I felt like it wasn't appropriate. And he said, "That's great. You're running for politics. What party are you running for?" And I kind of put my head down and said, "The Conservatives." And he said, No, don't do that. He said, "Conservatives are great people. They love the environment. We still all have Canadian values, which means we take care of our neighbors. We just like to balance our budget." And, I know there are times when we have to say this deserves an investment, but I think we will all be watching what happens with the New Brunswick debt if we continue down the path of deficit. I think that it will put this government at risk for sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
could be an Achilles heel.
Yeah. I think so. Yep.
So how do you think the PCs will win another government? Is it just by fighting against that deficit, or is it another way? Is there another way?
I don't know, because I don't see them having the conversations they need to have right now. And it does go back to that place where I get stuck, right? Do we vote in parties? There's certain people. Look, there's people in my riding who they're going to vote Conservative. It doesn't matter. What was the Premier's expression? You could run a lampshade?
In northern New Brunswick.
In northern New Brunswick.
Oh my God, yeah. That really didn't help.
Yeah. And
Restigouche County, I think he said. But,
I think Ian Hannah-Mansing in the federal election night, he said you could run a cat. And then he made a reference to John Williamson. Do you remember that?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Like there are certain people that are just always going to vote for the party.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's going to happen. And then there's those swing voters, and they're the moderates. So, yeah.
Oh, I kind of want to ask you about the PC party in New Brunswick and how it sits with the federal Conservatives. And we noticed, with the Higgs government drifted a little more towards the right. They brought in some kind of Western values, some Western spin doctors, that sort of thing. And do you feel that the PC party in New Brunswick still sits a little differently from the federal Conservatives, or are they kind of one and the same now?
I've got so many things I want to say. I want to tell you about my first experience with Steve Outhouse.
Right.
I don't know if that really answers your question, but it might actually kind of.
Okay. Well, sure.
Yeah.
Why not tell it?
So Steve comes in, and he was supposed to meet with all of us. And my mother actually passed away very tragically, in 2023. It was very unexpected, and it was fairly traumatic for my family how it happened. And so I had to put off the meeting with Steve by a couple of weeks. And I went in to see him. And he said to me, I'm sorry. I don't even know if he said he was sorry, but he said, you had a death. And I was like, yes, I did. He says, that all wrapped up now? And I remember looking at him and saying, wow, you've never lost a parent, have you? Yeah. And he looked at me and was like, no. And I thought, wow, he's so out of touch.
Right.
So out of touch.
Yes.
That's important here. I think that we were so out of touch with what was really happening. The direction that the feds are going in and the province tried was a politics of division, which I don't think is helpful.
All right.
And I have to admit, watching Carney right now, I'm a Conservative, I already told you that. I'm really impressed that he's changing the whole temperature. He's changed the conversations completely. We are talking about growth. We're not talking about Canada as though we're victims, right, which we often do. We've spent the last few years, decade, talking about how we're going to solve all the social problems. Look, let's be honest, we're never solving all the social problems. It's not happening. We are not eliminating homelessness as much as I would love to. Right? These are constant things that we're going to battle. But what he's talking about, he's talking about how we grow. He's talking about what I talked about at the beginning, about the growth mentality. And it's a completely different conversation. And I think that Canada is finding it refreshing. I think New Brunswick's finding it refreshing. And I think that's the direction that we need to go in if we really want to succeed.
Yeah.
You know what? If the voter rejects it, so be it. But that's the direction that I want to go.
I mean, I find that one thing that makes Carney successful and maybe potentially could have been the downfall of the federal Conservative Party is that he really just focused on the issues at hand, didn't try to fear monger, didn't try to bring up all of these things that didn't really necessarily have to do with the majority of the population. And I think that was maybe a theme that it seemed that Blaine Higgs was trying to reflect in his re-election campaign. The fear-mongering about Policy 713, the fear-mongering about transgender kids and pronouns and all of that sort of stuff. Do you think that he maybe would have won if he hadn't focused on that as much?
Well, I think it was a being out of touch. When we talked about transgendered kids, when we talked about the LGBTQ community, what people failed to remember is we all know people in the LGBT community. We all have family members. We all have friends. When we make them the target, you're making our friends and family the target. There was a lot of conversation about addiction and how to deal with addiction. And it was a really strong, forceful language. But again, just being out of touch. We've all dealt with people who are going through addiction. And we know that it's not as black and white as a pamphlet can make it out to be, or a 30-second statement. It's complicated. But you know what we can all relate to? We can all relate to wanting to do better for our families. We can all relate to how we want our families to have homes and good jobs and to be able to succeed and be able to thrive. And so that message of growth is something everyone can relate to. And I just think that that's where we have to focus, because all those other issues, they're complicated and we still have to address them, but we have to do it with such sensitivity, and it wasn't being dealt with in the sense, with the respect and the sensitivity that it deserved.
So Caitlin, she handicapped the field earlier in terms of the PC party leadership race.
Yeah, I guess.
Who would match up well against Susan Holt, do you think, in the next election for the Progressive Conservative Party?
I know I keep I keep skirting the answer, don't I? I don't know, when you keep talking about it a little bit, because that's the thing with politics is it changes so fast.
The people.
Well, it changes so fast, right? Like, think about this last federal election. We were concerned. We knew the Liberals were going down. They might end up with less than 30 seats. And then, bang, look what happened, right?
Right.
So, I mean, I guess if you're asking for this moment in time, who at this moment in time would make a good race? I don't really have the answer to that, but I do hope it's a good race, because there's nothing better than a good race. And that's what New Brunswick deserves. We deserve two really quality candidates having quality conversations, having educated, intelligent conversations.
Right.
We deserve better than mudslinging and, right?
Right.
Yep.
So I hope whoever that person is, I hope that there are people going to the polls to mark that X and they say, I don't know, they're both such great choices. What am I going to go with? That's my goal for New Brunswick.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the People's Alliance Party just folded. I'm sure you heard about that.
Yeah, yeah.
I think that their story is a really interesting story because, you know, Chris Austin, he was the leader for a while, and then him and Michelle Conroy decided to join the PCs following their majority win. So, you know, the party seemed to change a little bit after that. Do you think that they had any influence on the direction of the party after that?
I think they had probably almost more influence before. Like, I remember during the COVID years, like during the minority government, they would often know about what was going on in government before we did.
Right. Right.
So I think that they actually probably had more leverage before joining the party than after joining the party.
Yeah. Do you think, though, that, I mean, since the pandemic, the PCs have kind of gone a little bit farther to the right, I'd say. I think most people would be able to agree with that. Do you think, and in my mind, I think that made the People's Alliance a little bit irrelevant, honestly, because there was a little bit less room for them to stake out their own claim in the political spectrum. With them now folding, do you think that there's a chance that there's another party that might pop up, or do you think that it might be a good idea for the PCs to even split and form?
Oh, that would be a New Brunswick tradition, right?
Yeah.
This is what I'm going to say is really controversial. I'm sorry.
Go for it.
But, you know, I often compare our politics to like Protestant politics. So I grew up in the Protestant faith. I'm still a member in the Protestant faith. And, you know, I grew up in an independent church, and the joke was always, you know, if you didn't like what was going on, just go start your own church, which is so different than Catholicism, right? Because Catholicism, it just like so holds together. Okay. So I think there are also some real cultural dynamics that are at play there as well between like Anglophone New Brunswick and Francophone New Brunswick. I know I'm being very stereotypical, and it's a very dangerous conversation to have, but I think it's an interesting conversation. You do keep going back to the whole, you know, moving to the right and the right. And I kind of keep skirting that conversation. You asked about social conservatism, and I have to admit, when I got it to the table, I thought I was probably going to be the most social conservative, because I think I probably am fairly social conservative.
And that's fine.
But I think that's okay. I think I'm allowed to be. I think that's, again, why it's great to be a free Canadian, because it allows me to move in that realm. But I don't think that it's right for me to impose it on you. Right? Christ didn't impose it on anyone. He always said, you're free to choose. And I always have felt that when we cross that world of imposing our values on another, then I don't even think it's Christ-like, right? Because he didn't do that. But there is something I still want to come back to, which is that right-wing side. I think it's a really important conversation for us to have, because if we don't start addressing the fact that we have a group of individuals who feel marginalized, disenfranchised, and they are those who were historically empowered, if we don't start talking about that group of society, we're at risk. And that's where some of that populism has really gained some momentum, and we're seeing it in the United States, right? We're seeing what Donald Trump attracted. And I was reading, even about the numbers. He attracted large numbers of young people, like that angry sort of underlying feeling.
Mm-hmm.
It's real. And as much as we talk about the importance of diversity at the table, we can't turn a blind eye to what's actually happening, which is a growth on those who are now feeling as though they're being left behind.
Sure.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, Andrea, do you think you'll ever return to politics?
You know what? I loved it. I still love it. One of the things that I have talked about is the value of people like me who have had experience in the system and could give back. And I think that provincially, we probably need some type of organization like a council of past legislators, because I think we still have something to offer.
Mm-hmm.
We have nothing at stake. So, people would also come into your office and say, I voted for you. Or if you don't do this, I'm not going to vote for you. Okay, well, I don't have people having that leverage over me anymore, but I still have experience that I can give back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And, when I first got elected, one of the first things I did, I called every past attorney general and justice minister I could find who would take my call and say, it didn't matter to me if they were liberal or conservative. And I said, tell me what I need to know.
Great. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to hope that future governments will look at people like me and say, let's pick up the phone and call her and see what it looks like from the other side.
We tend to drop our people pretty quick,
We do.
particularly premiers, I find.
Yeah, it's been a bit of switching back and forth.
They're important one day and then forgotten the next. And there is some institutional knowledge there that
100%. It's really
always
important.
can be tapped. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that's actually all the time we have for today. Thank you so much. We should have you on for a part 2.
Right? Can we bring Tyler Campbell in too? Because
Oh.
That would be an episode to watch.
Thanks, guys. I really appreciate the offer. Hope I didn't talk your ear off.
Oh, this was great. Thanks so much, Andrea, for being here.
Okay. Thanks, Andrea, and see you next week.
See you next week. Thank you for listening to Soundbite, a production of Porter O'Brien and CHSR 97.9 FM. Special thanks to our podcast host, CHSR, our sound editor, March Rojas Velasquez, as well as Adam Porter, who provided our theme music. You can find all our episodes on Spotify and Apple Podcasts under Soundbite, and you can follow us on Facebook, Blue Sky, and Twitter at SoundbiteNB, as well as LinkedIn under Soundbite Podcast.